Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving headfirst into a sound that, well, for many of us, it really defines an era of music. Just picture a guitar riff, transforming from this gentle, shimmering wave into something almost like a metallic jet engine roar, swirling all around you maybe before it settles back into this subtle, kind of watery pulse. It's a sonic signature that totally took hold of the 80s and 90s, gave countless musicians a really unique voice. So our mission on this deep dive is to unpack the story of the Boss BF2 Flanger. And this isn't just about understanding another stomp box. It's about discovering how this little compact, pretty unassuming device became a genuine creative catalyst, how it shaped entire genres and democratized these powerful sonic textures for a whole generation of guitarists. We're going to trace its journey right from its origins to its, frankly, undeniable cultural footprint. And yeah, all our insights today come from looking deep into the history of this pedal, its design, how it evolved, and of course the legendary artists who used it.
It really is quite remarkable, isn't it, how a specific effect, when it's packaged just right, can become so universally adopted. The Boss BF2 Flanger, right, released in 1980 and kept going until 2001. That makes it one of Boss's longest-running compact pedals. And that alone tells you it wasn't just some fleeting trend. It had serious staying power.
Yeah, 21 years. That's an incredible run for any piece of gear, especially, in the fast-paced world of music tech. So paint a picture for us. What was the landscape like when the BF2 first showed up? Was Boss, blazing a completely new trail, or were they building on existing ideas?
Well, it certainly didn't just appear out of thin air. You can trace its lineage back to the earlier Roland jet phaser, actually. And the core concept, it definitely drew inspiration from those much bigger, more complex studio rack units. But Boss had a very clear strategy here. They wanted to distill that powerful, nuanced flanging effect into their now iconic, rugged, compact enclosure. And it wasn't just about making it smaller. It was about making those studio-grade effects accessible and practical for musicians, on the road or in smaller setups.
Okay, so bringing a sophisticated effect down to earth, literally onto a pedal board.
Yeah.
But they weren't alone in this space, right? I imagine there were some big players already defining what a flanger could be back then.
Right. Oh, you're absolutely right. The market already had some pretty formidable competitors, Electro Harmonics. They'd released their Electric Mistress back in '76. And MXR followed suit with their Flanger, also in '76. So yeah, it wasn't an empty playing field for Boss. Their goal, strategically, was to offer something that wasn't just comparable, but distinctly more versatile, robust, and crucially more affordable. They really wanted to stand out by offering a better value proposition, essentially.
And they absolutely nailed it, didn't they? Because if you think about the sound of the 80s and 90s, the BF2 became the defining flanger pedal. Across just an astonishing array of genres, it really carved out its own sonic territory.
Indeed it did. Its influence just permeated those decades. Think about the shimmering soundscapes of new wave, or the edgy, sometimes abrasive textures of post-punk, the grittier, swirling tones you find in grunge, and even those ethereal washes in shoegaze. The BF2 was right there, providing that distinctive modulation character. It let artists inject this layer of sonic complexity that just became integral to their sound.
Okay, so Boss found its niche, even in that competitive market. But that's just scratching the surface of what makes the BF2 so special, right? What's actually going on under the hood. What gives it that specific sonic fingerprint? I've heard people talk about its analog heart. What does that actually mean for the sound we hear?
Yeah, the secret to its sound, it really lies in its analog core. It uses a bucket brigade device or BBD circuit. In the later runs, you'd often find chips like the MN3207 inside. And this analog architecture, it's precisely what delivers that signature warmth and kind of organic feel that so many players talk about. It's definitely distinct from the sometimes more pristine, maybe colder sound you get from digital effects. That warmth is a really cherished quality, and it absolutely helped it stand out.
And it's incredibly versatile, too, thanks to those four main controls.
Yeah.
It's not just an on-off switch. You can really sculpt the sound. Let's break down what each knob actually does, because these are the tools that gave guitarists so much creative power.
Absolutely. Each of those four knobs offers a really powerful way to shape the flanging effect. So first up, you've got manual. This one adjusts the delay offset, which effectively shifts the center frequency of the sweep. You can think of it like focusing a lens, maybe. You're pinpointing where in the frequency spectrum that main swoosh is going to happen, from a deep rumble to a high shimmer.
Okay, like finding the sweet spot. Makes sense.
Exactly. Then you've got depth. This one's pretty intuitive. It controls the intensity of the sweep. It lets you dial in anything from something really subtle, barely there movement,
Oh, wow.
all the way to a super dramatic, almost overwhelming kind of undulation.
Right, from gentle wave to tidal wave.
Pretty much. Then there's rate. That dictates the modulation speed. So how fast that characteristic whoosh or shimmer effect repeats itself. Slow and syrupy or fast and frantic.
Gotcha. And the last one.
Yeah.
This is the one people really talk about, right?
Ah, yes, the resonance or res knob. This is where the BF2 truly shines for a lot of players. It basically manages the amount of feedback within the circuit. And what that does is significantly accentuate that distinct jet swoosh sound. Turning it up can push the effect into much more extreme, almost self-oscillating territories, creating this really intense sci-fi siren-like wails that are just iconic.
That resonance knob, it sounds like it really added a whole other dimension. How did that particular control change the game for guitarists,
Yeah.
allowing sounds that maybe weren't easily achievable before?
Oh, it was absolutely a game changer. Because, before the BF2, a lot of modulation pedals, especially choruses, they offered a much more subtle, less aggressive sound. The resonance control let players dial in that really distinct, pronounced jet engine sound. It pushed the effect into territories that were way more dramatic and experimental. It gave the flanger its unique character, letting it cut through a mix and create these truly memorable sonic textures.
Okay, so with all those controls working together, what kind of overall tonal palette did the BF2 offer? How would you describe its specific flavor compared to, say, its rivals like the Electric Mistress or the MXR?
It really offered a huge spectrum of sounds. You could get everything from a very subtle, almost chorus-like shimmer,
Yeah.
adding just a delicate movement to your tone, all the way to those really dramatic, highly metallic sweeps. And yeah, while it could do a beautiful chorus like shimmer, the way Flanger does it is different. It uses much shorter, tighter delay times. That creates those distinctive metallic comb filter sweeps, unlike the thicker, more detuned sound of a chorus. It's that precise shifting quality that gives it the jet engine roar.
Right. It's a different mechanism for a similar-ish effect sometimes.
Exactly. And compared to its competitors, well, it was generally known for being a bit more aggressive and cutting than, say, the MXR Flanger, which often had a smoother character. But conversely, it was maybe less airy or watery than the Electro-Harmonix Electric Mistress. So this allowed it to carve out a very specific and, for many, very appealing sonic niche.
So it wasn't just versatile in a general sense. It had its own distinct voice among the crowd. How did that adaptability translate into its practical use for musicians? What kinds of things were they doing with it?
Precisely. Its adaptability meant it could cover a really wide range of applications. It excelled at traditional flanging, obviously, offering that classic modulated tone, but it could also do doubling effects, giving you a thicker, richer sound. And it could even venture into more experimental, almost sci-fi-esque effects when you cranked that resonance. It truly was an adaptable tool for creative expression. It gave guitarists this broad sonic toolkit all in one compact box.
Given how impactful that initial design was, it's fascinating to think about how a pedal with such a long life adapts over time. How did the BF2 itself evolve and change over its incredible production run? We're talking about things like geographical shifts that collectors still debate today, right?
That's a great point. Its production history does offer some fascinating details. The early Japanese models, the ones produced through the 1980s, they're often the most collectible. These made-in-Japan units are particularly noted by, well, discerning players for having maybe a darker and warmer tone compared to the later versions.
Okay, so for the collectors out there, what exactly is it that differentiates those early Japanese models? Is it just the Made in Japan label, or is there a genuine audible difference that sets them apart and makes them so sought after?
Well, it's probably a combination, really. Some of the mystique is definitely tied to their vintage status and, where they were made. But many players do report that the Japanese units possess this subtle, warmer quality, maybe particularly in the lower mid-range frequencies, which can give them a slightly more organic feel. It's often debated, of course, but for those with a really refined ear, those nuances are definitely real and contribute to their desirability.
That's a real deep dive for the tone connoisseurs. But then production moved, didn't it, to Taiwan? Did that change the sound in a really significant, noticeable way for most players, or was it more subtle?
Yeah, the manufacturing did indeed shift to Taiwan starting in the mid-1980s and continued there. And while the core circuits, largely remained unchanged, Some players did observe small tonal differences, perhaps a slightly brighter or maybe a more immediate response in the Taiwanese ones. These are often pretty subtle nuances, but as we know, in the world of guitar tone, even those minor shifts can create distinct preferences among musicians.
It's amazing how those little details become part of a pedal's legend. And Boss, being Boss, they didn't just stop at guitarists with this pedal, did they? I heard they thought about the rhythm section too.
They absolutely did. The Boss BF2B bass flanger was introduced during the 80s and 90s. It was a special edition, and this version was specifically tuned for bass guitar. It offered an extended low-end response, which was crucial for bass players, allowing them to get those flanging effects without sacrificing their instrument's fundamental frequencies, losing all the bottom end. It really demonstrates Boss's commitment to different instrumental needs, making sure their effects worked optimally for everyone.
That's really thoughtful design and market awareness. But eventually, even the longest-running pedals reached their sunset. What happened? What was the end of the line for the BF2?
Yeah, the BF2 was ultimately discontinued in 2001. It was then replaced by the BF3 flanger. And the BF3, that represented a pretty significant step forward in terms of features. It expanded on the original's capabilities, adding modern stuff like stereo outputs, tap tempo functionality, and even new modes like Ultra and Gate Pan. It really marked a transition, I think, to a new era of more maybe digitally enhanced and versatile modulation pedals from Boss.
Okay, so in evolution, keeping the flanger effect a vibrant part of the Boss lineup. Now let's get to the really fun part, the cultural impact, the pedal of the stars.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just a beloved pedal for enthusiasts, it's been integral to some truly iconic sounds.
Oh, it absolutely has. The BF2 found its way onto just countless pedal boards and records. It really shaped the sound of a generation. John Frusciante of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, for instance, famously incorporated flanging into his layered, often quite psychedelic textures. Adding that distinctive movement to his solos and rhythm parts, he wasn't afraid to use it prominently, that's for sure.
And speaking of iconic, you simply cannot talk about the 90s without mentioning Kurt Cobain. The BF2 was part of his sonic arsenal too, wasn't it? That surprises some people.
Without a doubt, Kurt Cobain utilized it for modulation on recordings from both the Bleach and Nevermind eras. Its ability to create this raw, swirling energy, it perfectly complemented Nirvana's aggressive yet somehow melodic sound. It really became a signature texture within grunge. It added this sort of grittiness that just suited his style perfectly.
And then you have someone completely different, like Robert Smith from The Cure, who conjured such distinct atmospheric soundscapes. How did the BF2 fit into his world, which feels so different from Nirvana's?
Right, Robert Smith employed the BF2 often in more shimmering chorus-like settings, and those were absolutely crucial for crafting those iconic goth and post-punk atmospheres. You know that sound? It provided a certain lushness and movement that just became a hallmark of The Cure's sound. And then, yeah, on the dreamier side of things, for the swirling textures of shoegaze, Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine famously utilized various Boss modulation pedals, and the BF2 was definitely part of that arsenal, achieving those ethereal soundscapes that define the genre.
It really is fascinating how one single pedal could be adopted across such wildly different genres.
Yeah.
And used to create such varied sonic identities. It's pretty incredible. So beyond these famous users, what's the BF2's overall cultural footprint? How did it leave its mark?
Well, the BF2 truly defined the sound of flanging throughout the 1980s and 90s, no question. Its widespread presence on just countless records cemented its status as a genuine industry standard. It was also incredibly innovative for its time, remember, being one of the first modulation pedals to incorporate that dedicated resonance or feedback control. And this, as we discussed earlier, allowed for much more extreme and expressive effects than was typically possible with, say, a standard chorus pedal back then. It really pushed creative boundaries for artists.
And I imagine its accessibility was a huge factor too, right? It wasn't some super boutique, prohibitively expensive piece of gear. This connects back to what you said earlier about democratization.
Exactly. Its affordability, combined with Boss's legendary reputation for, well, building pedals like tanks, their durability, it meant it was accessible to beginners just starting to experiment with effects. But at the same time, it was powerful and versatile enough to be adopted by professionals all across the globe. This really did democratize a high-quality effect, truly putting sophisticated sound-shaping tools into the hands of a much broader range of musicians, not just those with huge studio budgets or endorsements.
So what does all this mean for the BF2 today? Is it just a footnote in pedal history, or does it still hold a special place?
Oh, far from a footnote. Today, the BF2 is absolutely considered a classic analog flanger. Those vintage Japanese units, in particular, they continue to command significant collector interest, which really underscores its enduring legacy and its sought-after tone. It's proof that great design, great sound really stands the test of time.
And there you have it, the Boss BF2 Flanger. We've traced its journey as Boss's pioneering flanger, explored its versatile analog sweep, and delved into its really profound impact across rock, alternative, and experimental music. Even after being replaced by the BF3, it clearly remains one of Boss's most celebrated modulation pedals, a true classic of the compact pedal era.
It's truly remarkable when you stop and consider how a single, pretty simple compact effect pedal can not only define the sonic landscape of an entire generation, but also continue to inspire new sounds decades later. It really encourages you, I think, to think about how these technological tools become extensions of artistic vision, and how many unsung heroes of music are often found in the gear used to create it. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other small pieces of tech do you think have had such a monumental, yet maybe often overlooked, impact on the sound of music we love?